We are on the campus of Washington Community High School in Washington, Illinois. The Raymond R. Torrey Gymnasium tonight playing host to a Mid-Illini Conference boys basketball battle. The 5-1 Morton Potters have come to Washington to square off against the 3-1 Washington Panthers. Hello, everybody, and welcome into the broadcast as you get a look at all of the trophies that the Washington Panthers athletic teams have won over the years. It's cold outside. Welcome you inside with John Camosa. I'm Joey Wright. John, the Clutch Sports Media pregame show here about 15 minutes before varsity tip-off. It's going to be a good one. The battle between these teams on Saturday, so physical. Washington came away a 53-45 winner, but that 8-point win, a little misleading, John. It's going to be a battle tonight.
I agree, Joey. It's going to be a great game between two Mid-Illini powerhouses. Coach Eric Schumacher said that it's going to be a war tonight, as it was on Saturday. Both these teams are extremely physical, so it's going to be a grind. We'll see if Washington can come away with another win here or if Morton steals it from Washington on the road.
We have seen, John, on the Clutch Sports Media airwaves this season, both of these teams play. We'll get to our key players in a little bit. But the physicality is something that we talk about when we talk about Saturday's battle. Again, it was a 53-45 win for Washington, keyed by Devon Vanderheydt's 16 points. One of the best uncommitted players in the area is Vanderheydt, the senior. And Eric Schumacher, he says this is going to be a war. I mean, he is ready to fight tonight.
Yeah, and when we talked to him a couple weeks ago, I believe when Limestone was here, and you know, Coach said he treats every one of these games like it's a playoff game, and I think you can see that when they're on the floor. You got guys diving after loose balls, really turning up the pressure on defense in the offensive end. So I think we're going to see a battle tonight. And the atmosphere, even though we don't have a lot of fans in here, you can hear the energy and the noise. It feels like a postseason game.
During the JV game, John, I'm glad you bring that up. It was the freshman teams. They were loud. The Washington team just off to our right, I mean, they were getting into it. It felt like a I don't want to say like a capacity crowd because we look around, you know, we've got those reminders everywhere that it's not, but it felt like a game during a normal season. It was loud in here, and we expect the freshman teams, the JV teams as well, to be loud and provide that spark again tonight. John, we'll look at our key players, and we'll start with Vanderheydt. 16 points against Morton on Saturday. We mentioned has not committed to play college ball next year. Vanderheydt will be 40 in white tonight, the Washington senior. Big man that can do it all. He can score, he can defend. He is a lot of fun to watch.
I agree, a lot of fun. And, you know, outside of Vanderheydt, they're very well balanced. Dolores College commit, 6'5" forward Tyler Bass. They have Isaac Mapson, who's just a key piece for them down low in the post. Then you have Ethan Mounts and Drew Lewis, who are your two strong guards for you. On the opposite end for Morton, look for 6'5" forward Josiah Getz. He's very physical, gets inside. He can pretty much do it all for the Potters. And then Bo Durbin, a returning player. So it's going to be a really good game, and I think you're going to see a lot of good matchups out on the floor tonight, Joey.
Especially when you talk about Bo Durbin, John. He's probably my player to watch tonight. Getz is, of course, a varsity returner, very big part of this Potters squad. But Durbin with 13 points against Washington on Saturday. Varsity returner, we saw him last year. What stuck out to me most, John, when we saw him last year against Pekin is his ability to hit the clutch shot. Bo Durbin is not afraid to take the big shot in a big situation.
I agree, and when they space the floor, they can find Durbin, so that's one of those guys you don't want to leave open. And I think for Washington, as good as their defense is, we could see a lower scoring game like we saw on Saturday, the 53-45. But, you know, expect a physical game, a hard-fought defensive battle, and then some scoring mixed in there. But, you know, when these teams get going on the three-point, it could be a shootout for sure.
Looking forward to watching it tonight. About 12:30 showing on the scoreboard. Glad you're with us, ClutchSportsIL.com. Joey Wright and John Camosa in with you. The rest of our crew is Larry Larson at the controls of our computer. John Michaels on our camera tonight. Josh Schwam taking pictures for us and running our social media accounts. Also happy to have Gavin Russell in the house. Sophomore at East Peoria High School, just kind of observing how we do things. So a full 6-person crew. We could field a basketball team, John, with a starting 5 and someone coming off the bench.
We certainly could, Joey. And, you know, it's a great thing what we're doing here and having a full crew out, everyone coming out to the games and, you know, providing a feed for those of you watching at home. And this is obviously a game that we've had circled and a really fun one that we're looking forward to.
The JV game was great. The varsity game expected to be just the same. Tell your friends, tell your family, even tell people you don't know all that well. ClutchSportsIL.com has the call. Panthers and Potters tonight. And as we head towards tip-off, 11:35 showing on the clock. You see that at the bottom of your screen. We will take a look at some other games from around the area tonight on this chilly Tuesday afternoon, the 15th of January. It's the 16th, actually. Dunlap at Metamora tonight. We'll look at boys' games first. Dunlap at Metamora, Limestone at East Peoria, Pekin at Canton. Those are all Mid-Illini games. Champaign at, that would have been Peoria Notre Dame at Champaign Central in the Big 12. That has been postponed. Richwoods at Normal Community, also a boys' game in the Big 12. But when we look at these Mid-Illini games, John, I want to focus in on Limestone and East Peoria first. I was talking with Gavin Russell before we came on, of course, a sophomore over there. That game, outside of this one, I think that might be the game to watch in the Mid-Illini Conference tonight. That's a game that both teams kind of have circled on their calendars.
I agree, Joey, and I think both teams right now are just kind of trying to find themselves. I know Limestone's, been in some games, and they got Cade Nation and, Josh Gardner over there, so some really good players. I think same with East Peoria, they've battled against Metamora and some other schools, so they're just trying to find their rhythm too. But I think that's a game for both Limestone and East Peoria to try to kind of prove, hey, we want some bragging rights in this conference and work their way up the ranks. So
East Peoria team that Gavin was telling me will hit its stride. Maybe hasn't quite gelled yet, but that's going to be a fun one to watch. Dunlap and Metamora, also something that I've got my eye on, and Pekin and Canton as well. Really, and when we look at those two games, you probably give the upper hand to Metamora against Dunlap. Pekin and Canton, though, that could be wide open too.
Yeah, and Joey, looking at that Dunlap Metamora, we've gotten to see Metamora twice now, and I can't stress enough how phenomenal of a player Ethan Kaiser has shown to be in these early outings. 34 points against Roanoke Benson, and I think tonight it'll be a nice test because we haven't really gotten to see Dunlap. COVID concern postponed a lot of their games early in the season, so finally getting a chance to go back out there, and led by Gabe Calhoun, I think Dunlap has a chance to really show who they are in this conference.
That'll be a big one for the Eagles. We look at this Morton Potters team. They have wins against Canton and Pekin. Of course, those two teams going at it tonight. And, John, we look at some girls' games from around the area. It's got to be Metamora and Dunlap, right? We saw those teams in Metamora on Saturday afternoon, a 3-overtime thriller. Dunlap pulled it out. They are 9th in the most recent 3A girls basketball poll. If we weren't here in Washington tonight, and I'm certainly glad we are, I think we would be in Dunlap tonight watching that rematch.
Certainly would, Joey, and that game was probably one of the better games I've seen in the last few years. Mm-hmm. I just can't tell you how back and forth it was. If those of you at home didn't get a chance to see that game on our stream, but every time there was an answer from Metamora, Dunlap would come right back down, or vice versa, and it was a phenomenal game, and as you stated, a 3-overtime battle, but it'll be certainly hard to top that one tonight. But those two teams really battle it out, so it'll be nice to see who comes out on top, whether it's Dunlap or Metamora, but those are two of your best teams in the Mid-Illini right now.
Really excited to see what happens in that one. Also, girls' games tonight, it's just the reverse of what we told you with the boys. East Peoria at Limestone, Canton at Pekin. And, John, I believe everything in the Mid-Illini is on tonight, correct?
Yeah, I saw some small school games earlier, a couple large school games that got postponed as the weather was pretty bad. But I think, for the most part, all the Mid-Illini games are on as scheduled.
And then one small school game we have on our radar, that would be Midwest Central at Hardham. I believe Illinois Valley Central is in action tonight against Pontiac as well. And, again, not sure if those games have been postponed or not, the smaller schools. And if we get a score on those, if they are playing, you'll see those flashing across the ticker on the bottom of your screen. We are about 7:25 away from the end of the warm-up period, and you'll see our game clock pop on. Larry Larson is down there optimizing that for our game coverage, so appreciate his efforts down there as the clock ticks down in the warm-up period. And, John, this might be – we were up and set up pretty early, and the JV game was probably the longest one we've seen this season. That was a 59-54 winner for Washington. And it may sound cliche, but anytime you see a close JV game, that always seems to set the tone for the varsity game, doesn't it?
It does. And, even looking outside of the JV, we'll go on to the girls' side, and you see Morton and Washington was close the other day. So I just feel like whenever you see these two teams match up, there's always some rival on the line, and both teams want to battle it out. And I don't think it's going to be any different tonight. But like I said, Devon Vanderheydt, Josiah Getz, if they're paired against each other, that's going to be one fun matchup.
Josiah Getz for Morton, the 6'5 senior forward. Mentioned him at the top of the show. And, John, I'm excited to see some of those guard battles. We look at Washington, Drew Lewis, Ethan Mounts, going up against the likes of Bo Durbin and Ashton Everding type for Morton. There are going to be a lot of fun battles all around the floor tonight.
I agree, and anytime you get we've seen a lot of new faces this year, and, some underclassmen are getting their chance to shine, but when you get those returning players like Bo Durbin and, you have Drew Lewis, it's that extra year, just you could see that leadership that's added and the value. And these guys, how they've matured and, being off for 11 months and getting a chance to practice every day and, regardless if it's with their team doing individual workouts, we've just seen these guys grow as players. And like you said, that guard play is going to be really good tonight. Ethan Mounts, tremendous ball handler, as well as Bo Durbin on Morton's side. So I think we're going to see a forward battle, but guards are going to stand out as well.
And when we talk about Washington specifically, kind of going off what you said, we've talked with Eric Schermerhorn a lot in advance before the season and as the season has gone along. He's got a team of leaders, he will tell you. And that starts with the guards, goes down to the forwards and Vanderheydt. But that's a team that'll compete. And Matt Franks has a little bit of that in Morton as well. But just the leadership in this Washington program is something that I will look at throughout the night. And, John, if the Panthers ever find themselves down tonight, Morton can't get too ahead of themselves.
Yeah. And Joey, going off what you just said about the leadership, before we were talking about that JV game, and you see the varsity team sitting alongside the bleachers there, and just every one of those guys was into it, cheering, encouraging those guys. And I think that really, vibes off of that, and those underclassmen pick up on that. And we've seen this in Washington throughout the years. The late Kevin Brown passed down to Eric Schermerhorn. We've seen that leadership. It's next man up. And I remember talking to Devon Vanderheydt before the Limestone game this season. He said, it can't be one to lead a team. You need multiple leaders. And we've certainly seen that this season with Washington.
And, John, you wrote a feature on the Washington Panthers team, the program. That was our Friday feature last week. And that's something that Eric Schermerhorn mentioned was how Kevin Brown, the late Kevin Brown, of course, longtime coach of this Panthers team, he really instilled a culture of toughness, of intensity. And that I'm glad you brought that back up, because that is something we see night in and night out from the Panthers team. And, of course, the Potters have a great culture. The Potters athletic department and the athletic program as a whole, we look at what the girls basketball team has done. The football team, always a tough out. They've got that as well. But specifically zeroing in on Washington, it's a culture that Kevin Brown started and Eric Schermerhorn has maintained.
Yeah, and when you get a coach like Kevin Brown and how tremendous he was, it even carried over to baseball. Baseball team made state back in the early 2000s or mid-2000s and got him there and finished third. Carried it back over to basketball. You see how he's instilled this leadership in guys that they've taken outside of high school. And then, Eric Schermerhorn had that quote in that story that I wrote and said that they don't celebrate wins. They don't get down on losses. They celebrate the toughness, the grittiness, the guy who gets after loose balls, and you celebrate the things that people don't usually see. So that's just the mindset that Washington has. They don't look for the flashy pass or, get too overhyped about wins, but it's more of just get down and dirty and guys that can really just lay it all on the line. I think we've seen that a lot this year, Joey.
It's great to have that mentality of not celebrating wins and losses in a season like this, isn't it? With no postseason, what you see is what you get. There will be a Mid-Illini Conference tournament at the end of the season, but when you can rally around each other and play for each other, especially in a season like this, that goes a long way.
I agree, and I think there's a lot of pride on the line, not just Washington, but with all these teams this season. Without there being a postseason, it makes each game more special. You're playing for wins and gives you a chance to really lay it all on the line and, get your record the best it can be, and then get ready for next year when we hopefully see a more normal season, as you'd say.
Would certainly hope for a return to normalcy next season, right? Take this time before tip-off to remind you that tonight's coverage is brought to you by Jake Weston, State Farm Insurance of Washington, Illinois. For all your insurance needs, Jake Weston is your guy. Call him at 309-444-4441. A lot of fours in that number. Glad to have Jake Weston aboard tonight and on a couple of our broadcasts involving Washington throughout the season. And you got the Jake from State Farm angle in there. He's got Drake from State Farm to compete with him now.
Yep. And it makes it a pretty easy number to remember.
It does.
Like you said, a lot of 4s in there, and I think I remembered that number after I heard it the first time. So.
309, a bunch of 4s, and the last number's 1.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
Minute 22 on the clock there. Get you the specific time stamp. Nearing tip-off here in Washington. John, as we run out of time here in our pregame show, glad to have our viewers with us and those who have been with us since the top. I'm not a big prediction guy, but let's get a kind of an outlook of how this game might go. You mentioned low scoring earlier. Might we have an idea who wins it?
You know, having Washington win on the road, it's tough to beat a team twice, especially a team as skilled as Morton. But this Washington team is so good at home, as we've seen, you know, beating Limestone twice here. It's hard to go against Washington in Torrey Gymnasium. So I'm going to say Washington. I think it'll be in the same scoring realm of the 50s. We could see 60s if both teams get going and break down on defense a little bit. But we'll say mid-50s and Washington wins. We'll say by 3 or 4.
I like that. It's tough to go against the Panthers. We'll see how it all plays out. National anthem's upon us. We will pause real quick for the anthem and get you back for the game. ClutchSportsIL.com. Back in with you, the Raymond R. Torrey Gymnasium on the campus of Washington Community High School in Washington, Illinois. Clutch Sports Media is proud to present Mid-Illini Conference boys basketball tonight. The Washington Panthers host the Morton Potters. Joey Wright and John Camosa back in with you. John, tip-off just moments away. We'll get to our starting lineups in just a moment. Morton will be introduced first. Recap for us. Tell us who you're looking for in the game for Morton, I should say. Stumbled on my words a little.
Yeah, Morton, I think you're looking at those returners that really jump out at you. Bo Durbin, Austin Everding, and Josiah Getz, who we've mentioned multiple times. But three key players in this game, 3 veteran leaders, and I think we're going to see a lot of production out of them. As far as Washington goes, you know, a guy that really jumps out at you on paper is Devon Vanderheydt, who can light you up from 3 or grind it down in the post, and then Tyler Bass, Loras College commit, and Drew Lewis. Basically anybody in that starting 5 for Washington's dangerous.
And we will get you the starting lineups right now. We will start with Morton. Morton enters this one 5-1 on the young season, 4-1 in Mid-Illini Conference play. That one loss coming against Washington a couple of days ago. Bo Durbin is the point guard for Morton, number 10 in gray. He's joined by Josiah Getz, Ben Carter, Ashton Everding, and Thomas Kruger will be the starting lineup for the Potters. Potters in gray and displayed on the left side of the score bug, bottom of your screen. The Washington Panthers being introduced right now. They will be run at point guard by Ethan Mounts, number 10 in white. Drew Lewis joins him in the starting lineup, as does Isaac Mapson, Tyler Bass, and Devon Vanderheydt. We've talked all about Josiah Getz and Bo Durbin for Morton and for Washington. Vanderheydt, Bass, and Mounts. And the lineups have concluded. John, we're ready to play some basketball here in Washington tonight.
We're ready, Joey, and we've been looking forward to this game, I think, since Saturday, you know, when we knew we were coming here. And it's definitely going to be a battle, but it's going to be a really good Mid-Illini game.
Certainly will. Morton has won the tip-off, shall we say. No tip-offs in IHSA basketball this year. Every game starts with an inbound pass. Morton triggers it and gets us underway. Bo Durbin has it for the Potters, and he will get it back from Ashton Everding, guarded by Drew Lewis. Tries to go to work, loses it, but Everding is there, and a feed to Getz. Getz guarded by Mapson. Potters taking advantage of no shot clock. A little bit slow, and now they'll lose it. Tyler Bass the steal for the Panthers, and Washington will get its first possession of the game, 30 seconds in.
And like we said, two guys to really watch, Drew Lewis and Ethan Mounts, extremely well with the ball.
Vanderheydt at 3 is off.
Should say extremely well ball handlers, but they definitely control the game when they have it in their hands.
And we'll see what the Potters can do right here. Everding will take a 3, and Everding's quick 3 off the mark. Lewis couldn't corral the rebound, but Mapson comes sailing in. Out of bounds, last touch by Morton.
And Joe, you touched on that physicality and guys getting after it, and we already saw it, 1 minute into the game, already getting on the floor and diving for loose balls.
Everding, the inbound pass. And he'll try to go to Durbin, and Durbin charge on his way up. The Panthers sideline likes that. The Panthers freshman team likes that. And there's a lot of energy inside Torrey Gym right now, John, for Washington.
Certainly is, and that's one thing that we've seen early on that we mentioned, that defense already getting after a loose ball, almost forcing a turnover and taking a charge there.
Drew Lewis tries to go to Vanderheydt in the alley-oop. They can't quite connect. Morton feeds to Everding in the corner, and Everding will go to work, and a nice find, nice finish. Josiah Getz gets us on the board tonight.
And if he can separate down there, Joey, we're going to see a lot of Josiah Getz right under the basket.
2 points for Getz, 2 points in the game, and Mounts has it. Now swings to Lewis. Mapson at the top of the arc, and Mounts will take a deep 3 for the Panthers, and that's just a little bit short. Both defenses pretty good on the rebounding thus far, and an off-balance 3 in the corner can't quite fall for Carter. Rebound Vanderheydt, and the Panthers will run and gun.
That's one thing we've seen, Joey. Neither of these teams are afraid to shoot the 3 ball. Pretty much up and down this lineup, we have shooters.
Lewis's pass to Bass was tipped. Panthers get it back and score. It's a 3 from Vanderheydt.
And that's one thing, you don't want to leave Vanderheydt alone. He can burn you out there.
Devon Vanderheydt, the 6'7 senior, talked a lot about him at the top of the show, can score from anywhere on the floor. Alley-oop attempt earlier didn't quite connect, but he splashes one in from deep. Morton will try to do the same. It's off from Getz. And Vanderheydt hauls in the rebound. Lewis takes it ahead and back to Vanderheydt. And Vanderheydt called for the travel. Just trying to do a little too much too quick there, John.
He did, Joey, and that's another thing we'll touch on with the two big guys on both sides, Vanderheydt and Getz. Getz isn't afraid to step out and shoot it either. He usually prides himself on a low post player, but he'll get outside and shoot it too, as we just saw his 3 roll out a little bit ago.
Durbin the pass to Everding. Everding couldn't quite corral it, and Lewis will feed to Bass in the corner, back to Lewis, and Lewis looks at the 3. Off, and that'll hit the back of the iron, or the back of the basket, I should say. Out of bounds, and Morton will take over. 5 minutes and a second left. Glad you're with us on ClutchSportsIL.com tonight. Joey Wright and John Camosa and the entire crew, glad to be in with you. It's Bo Durbin for Morton. Durbin, only a junior, has been a big part of this Potters program for 2 years in a row now, and he stops and pops and puts Morton back in the lead.
I think, Joey, with Durbin's speed, he can definitely create his own shots out there, and as we just saw, a nice take to the basket.
Mounts went back behind him to Andrew Coker, who was into the game for Washington, and Coker was a little off the mark on the 3. And we will have our first mask timeout of the game. Comes with 4:34 left in the first quarter, and we are happy to let you know that Jake Weston State Farm in Washington, a proud sponsor of Clutch Sports Media and a proud sponsor of today's broadcast. Jake Weston, for all your insurance needs, call 309-444-4441. Easy to remember, John, talked about earlier. A lot of 4s, last number is 1.
And now that we got a timeout, Joey, we'll touch on our ticker that Matt McLean's over there in the corner and add him to our media crew members that we see at games. And shout out to Matt.
Matt McLean. Liking the hat there. He's got the station jacket, and he's looking at us now. We intend.
There he is.
There he is. We intend to do, John. When we haven't done it yet, but we want to go back, take a look at every local TV guy we've seen this season, and do like a fun little standings thing on our Twitter. So stay tuned for that. McLean's got to be up there. He's got to be up jockeying for the lead, I would think.
Yeah, him, Jim Matson, Kirk Pegler.
Yeah.
You know, same station, WMBD with Matt McLean, Kirk Pegler. But these guys, just like us being at games, they're workhorses. So wherever there's a game, they're usually there with the camera.
It's been a busy spring for all of us. We just do one a night, but these guys, not uncommon to see McLean and company sneak into 4 or 5 gyms on a nightly basis. We'll have an offensive foul here for Morton. Washington ought to take over. No, pardon me, that'll be against Washington.
We talked about that defense too, Joey, early on. We're seeing that defensive battle right now in a low-scoring game. 4-3, 4 minutes out the gate.
Foul's pretty clean, though. 1 on each side, and Durbin guarded by Lewis. Panthers crowd comes alive, and the Potters forced to reset it. Seth Glatz, who is into the game, back to Durbin, and Durbin, a contested look. And I think they called that on the floor. No, they'll call that on the shot. Free throws coming up for Durbin.
And Joey, one thing that really stands out to me that's astonishing is giving these players a feel of some normalcy. The crowd noise is still loud, you know, despite there not being many fans, but you can hear the energy in this gym.
You really can, and it's primarily a Washington crowd, of course. We've got the Morton JV team, freshman team right off to our left. The Washington freshman and JV teams are right off to our right, and they are loud.
Yeah, not to mention you got the Washington cheerleaders courtside cheering on the boys. So
a lot of Washington parents directly opposite us. Second free throw, no good. Loose ball. And a foul called there against Washington. Carter hauled in the rebound and was fouled on the floor. And that's a heads-up play from Carter, John, to draw that foul.
Certainly was, and as we can see, another scrim there for a loose ball, but definitely got, like Eric Shumore said, it's going to be a war, and we could feel that early on.
Stands at 4-3. Yeah, only 7 points in the first 4 minutes of action. First quarter split evenly right now. And the officials talking it over. Kruger will inbound from right in front of the Washington bench. Recap it for you real quick. Washington's 3 points coming on a 3 from Vanderheydt. And Morton's 4 points coming on a pair of 2s, one from Bo Durbin, one from Josiah Getz. Morton and Thomas Kruger to inbound, and they will go down low to Carter. Carter back to Kruger. Kruger's 3 is off, but an offensive rebound for Morton and Bo Durbin. And Carter a 3 in the corner. He got it, and Morton sails out to a 7-3 lead.
And a good heads-up play there by Durbin to get that loose ball, kick it out to Carter. And like we said, Morton can shoot that 3.
And now a foul away from the ball on the Panthers. Morton will take over. And that will go against Drew Lewis for Washington. His first and the team's 4th. John, just a moment ago, told you that there was only 1 foul on each side. That's now gone up to 4 for Washington. Only 1 for Morton. Panthers wanted to travel, didn't get it, and Durbin sinks the mid-range jumper.
Yeah, Joey, I mean, they're letting them play through this. It's a physical game, but you like to see that, not too many foul calls in a game like this and letting them battle it out. As we just saw, like you said, they wanted to travel there from Durbin, but they gave him space, and he hits a shot.
Morton will inbound. The foul Washington will inbound. Foul against Morton. That'll go against 20. Seth Glatz. Glatz is first. Glatz did not start. He was the first off the bench for the Potters tonight. And an errant pass on the inbound. Washington giving chase. Ethan Keinitz is into the game. He couldn't get there in time, and Morton will take over from under the Washington basket.
And Joey, that name will stand out too on the football field this spring, Seth Glatz. Good football player for Morton, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Great receiver, I believe. As Morton tries to work it in, that pass to Getz, denied. Everding gets it, and Everding was looking for Carter. And Everding gets it again. And trying to go to Getz again, that is swatted away. Isaac Mapson was there. Everding, also a great football player for the Potters. A couple of dual sport athletes as we look at that roster.
Definitely, and unlike years past, this one's pushing into football season a little too early. Right as basketball ends, football's going to pick up there right in March.
And Bass trying to attack after we talk about football. That was a great play if you're a cornerback from Devon Vanderheydt to swat the inbound pass away. Bass the take and 2 free throws coming up. Talked at the top of the show, John, about how Washington, you can never count them out. And of course, it's way too early to even think about doing so. But would you have expected Morton to get out to a 9-3 lead, now a 9-4 lead this early?
I thought it was going to be a little bit closer, but like you said, don't count them out. And obviously, it's only just a 5-point game. But Morton's doing a good job. They're trying to get some passes in there. You can see that Washington's reading those, getting hands in them, but they're following up and getting those second chance points. So I think Morton's not backing away, and they've picked up on some of the strategies from Washington after seeing them on Saturday just so short.
With these double headers, it's hard to beat a team twice in a row. Morton looking good even after 2 makes from Bass at the free throw line. And a foul away from the ball called against the Potters. A lot of off-ball fouls we've seen tonight, and that'll go against Getz, his second.
And we'll see how they kind of adjust here, Joey, having Getz on the bench early on, but he's been a big part for him in there. See if Morton can keep up that intensity without him on the floor right now, because you don't want him to get into foul trouble any more than 2. Try to hold him at that before he gets into the second quarter here.
Mounts brought it up, and he's got it back now for the Panthers. Kynitz looked at the 3, didn't take it. And now Mounts to Mapson. Mapson goes to work, turns around, and drops it in.
And I think, too, Joey, with Getz on the bench, creates a little bit of mismatch with Mapson there, and you can see that was Lane Kaufman. Size difference, about 4 or 5 inches.
To Vanderheydt, the Panthers went, and Lane Kaufman called for the foul. Kaufman fresh into the game. I had that backwards. That was Vanderheydt, the fouls. They went into Kaufman. Kaufman is into the game recently here for the Potters, as John alluded to a moment ago. Glatz up top for the Potters. Now goes to Durbin, and Durbin looks for Getz. Getz in traffic. A miracle he got that shot off. Mounts up for the Panthers, and here's Mapson.
And Joey, with this Washington team, it's so hard to get a shot off in the post on them. They really swarm you down there.
Charge called on Vanderheydt. Vanderheydt tried to take it up strong. And in for the Panthers, enter Andrew Coker. He is back into the game as Vanderheydt comes out. 2 on Vanderheydt early on, John. Panthers will have to be careful with that. You don't want him in foul trouble of all players.
Yeah, and we talked about 2 players to really watch was Getz and Vanderheydt. And both on the bench early with 2 fouls.
Potter slow to start this offense. It's Everding guarded by Coker, and Everding will go back to Durbin, who is guarded by Kynitz. And Bo Durbin, tell you, John, he's taken a couple of those mid-range J's tonight. Some have fallen, some haven't, but an element of the scoring that you don't see often in today's game. Bass misses down low, gets his own rebound, cleans it up, and ties us up at 9.
What a strong effort there by Tyler Bass. Like I mentioned, the Loras College commit, and he'll be a good fit on that roster, but he's really developed through the years, and you can see that showing this year in his senior season.
Hudson Strube and Thomas Kruger in for Morton after the travel. Kruger, a starter for the Potters, in after a brief time on the bench. John, I feel like we haven't seen a lot of turnovers there. That travel was among the first we've seen. Another travel there for Washington. So 2 travels back to back, but I feel like a lot of possessions have either ended with shots or with a foul.
They have. I think that's what you're going to see, especially in a game where both teams, like we said, are so physical and, going for those second chance points or getting that extra effort inside. You're going to see some hands-on balls and more of that stuff.
Everding tried to go to work on Coker. Now it's Ben Carter. Carter guarded by Bass, and it's Kruger. Kruger spins and finds an open Carter, and Carter couldn't find the twine. Just a little bit short.
Yeah, Joey,
you go ahead.
Go ahead. I said we didn't touch on it too much, kind of going up and down their lineup, but I believe Kruger had a good game against Pekin the other night. Another shooter you don't want to leave out there. He can knock him down.
Potters and the Dragons going at it the other night. I believe that was Pekin's first loss, was to this Morton team. That was Pekin's first game, pardon me. Here's Bass for Washington. Bass is blocked and fouled. Comes with 1 minute and 7/10 left in the first quarter.
Yeah, when we talked to Eric Schumorn early in the season, you talked about how well balanced they are. You see Vanderheydt went to the bench with 2 fouls, but they really don't lose much out there when they're talking about players inside of how good Bass and Mapson are down in the post, and it's nice to have that on your roster.
Kynitz and Jamari White are in for Washington. Mapson and Jake Stewart to the bench. You heard John get real quiet during this free throw, and we do the same on the second. It's not a very loud gym when Washington is at the charity stripe. Morton will inbound inside of 2 seconds left in the first quarter, and a half-court jumper on the way falls just short. And that's how the first quarter will end. So call it an 8-0 run, 8-0 run for Washington, storming back from a 9-3 deficit. And we'll take this time to remind you that tonight's coverage is brought to you by Jake Weston State Farm of Washington, Illinois. Jake Weston, for all your insurance needs, call 309-444-4441. Glad to have Jake aboard tonight. He's gone in for a couple of Washington broadcasts this spring. Appreciate his support. And again, for all your insurance needs, Jake Weston, the guy, 309-444-4441.
Yeah, Joey, you were talking a little bit ago, seeing this game starting with Washington being down and how quick they can get right back into this. I think that really speaks volumes of their team of never counting themselves out, and those second chance points are huge. We've seen that a lot. Just Tyler Bass battling for his own rebounds, Isaac Mapson after a miss, and they never give up on a play. I don't think I've seen a Washington game this year where they are asleep on a play. They're always going for the extra effort.
We've seen a lot of that from Morton tonight, too. John, I go back to a foul on the situation early in the first quarter when Morton got the rebound on a missed free throw, and I believe it was Kruger that drew a foul on the floor. So a lot of heads-up play. We mentioned it would be a war at the top of the show, and it has been that, a very physical game as Washington triggers the second quarter.
Yeah, both teams, like I said, playing for some pride, and you're going to see a defensive battle. If you're not seeing a lot of scoring, you're going to see a lot of defense being played, and that's one thing you'll see until the final buzzer.
Kynitz to Mounts for Washington, and Mounts will attack. Mounts forced to get it out to Mapson. Mapson trying to attack. He spins. Would have had it if not for a great defensive play from the Potters. And now the Potters run. They'll stop. They'll pop. 3 from Durbin, just short. Got his own rebound, and he'll go to work. And he is fouled on his way up. Talk about heads-up play. How about Bo Durbin? Follows his shot.
I think, Joey, that's probably the 3rd or 4th time now we've seen Durbin miss a short jumper and hurry in there to grab his own rebound.
And he's at the free throw line, missing his first. Durbin, the 6-foot junior guard. Scary thought that he's only a junior. Had a great sophomore campaign a year ago and scored 13 points against Washington on Saturday. Has 5 so far tonight in a 1-point game.
And same thing with Ben Carter on that Morton roster, only being juniors. These guys still got so much more room to grow, and I mean, they almost play like seniors.
Kynitz was looking for Coker, and Coker repelled at the rim. Kynitz and Coker, a couple of younger players for Washington. Deep 3 from Carter is off. Cleaned up by Glatz. Glatz up and in, and Morton back to the point.
early on, if this tells you anything, we're going to see a back-and-forth game so far. I mean, both teams just doing a great job of getting after their own rebounds, playing good defense, and not afraid to shoot the three either.
As we see from Coker there, loose ball and a mass of bodies under the basket. Jump ball, that arrow will favor Morton. So the Potters will get it out of the jump, and John, I'll mention this real quick. We will be in the bonus for the rest of the half. 7 fouls right now for the Panthers, 5 for Morton, so 1 more in essence, and Washington's in the 1-1.
Yeah, and this is what your coaches preach in practice, where it comes down to free throws. You know, this is a chance for you to try to separate the score a little bit if you could get to the line, but it's going to be crucial down the stretch, Joey.
Glatz popped it out to the corner, and Hudson Strube called Strube's name a little bit tonight. 6'6" junior forward, good minutes behind Glatz, and he had a little bit of a path to the basket before Mounts got there and drew the charge. Heads up play from Ethan Mounts. That's not an easy play to make, John, when you've got, what is that? That is about a 7-inch height differential coming at you.
Yeah, and credit to Washington, how quick they can see that play unfolding and get over there to set themselves to take a charge or force a turnover or blocking foul, but it's a nice thing to see from Washington, and we've seen the same from Morton.
Call that 8 inches. Mounts is 5'10", and Strube is 6'6". Vanderheydt, fast pass down low to Mapson. And Isaac Mapson, John, he's been physical down there all game long.
He has, and with his size, we saw a mismatch early on, and then even if he's got a guy his size, but he really asserts himself down low, and Coach Eric Shermore touched on that he's really the glue guy down in the post.
Intercepted by Vanderheydt. Mounts runs the other way for Washington. He pulls up and drops it in. And there's the three-point game. Both teams have tried to display it. Both teams have had mixed success. Mounts has that one, and Washington has a 4-point lead. It's largest of the night. Morton quick on the other end. Vanderheydt hauls in the rebound. Mounts looking for Bass. Bass tried to take it up strong, and a well-timed jump from Seth Glatz, John, prevented what would have probably been an easy 2 points.
It was, and just that defensive effort. But now, Joey, we see with Vanderheydt back in the lineup, Josiah Getz still on the bench. See if Washington can kind of keep it going with this lead and pick up some more momentum going into halftime.
4 points, the Panthers' largest lead tonight. And make it 5 points on the first free throw from Bass. If you're just joining us, Morton jumped out to a 9-3 advantage early in the first quarter. Washington went on an 8-0 run thereafter, and since then it's been back and forth, but Washington on a bit of a run now here as they take a 6-point lead. Actually, John, so we'll go back to that. It's been back and forth, maybe a little misleading. Hold that thought as Durbin tried to find Lane Kaufman. It would be then a 15-3 run if you take it back from that 9-3 point. So Panthers have found their groove. As Coker has it stripped away, he was in a position to get his own miss there, and that jump ball will favor the Panthers.
I think as we're seeing too, Joey, a little bit more than earlier on, Washington's pushing it, getting rebounds, pushing it in transition a little bit, and Tyler Bass has done a really good job for the Panthers to pace him with 8, and wearing Morton down a little bit, but Morton still being physically on the other end, just can't get a couple shots to fall.
And at the mask timeout, 18-12 Washington. Take this break to remind you that tonight's coverage is brought to you by Jake Weston, State Farm in Washington, Illinois. Jake Weston for all of your insurance needs. He's your guy. Call 309-444-4441. The area code 4s and a 1. Jake Weston, State Farm in Washington, Illinois. Glad to have him aboard tonight and a couple of more times throughout the season. Appreciate Jake Weston for his support of high school sports in Washington and Central Illinois. Before the mask timeout, John, I thought I saw Drew Lewis and Devon Vanderheydt at the table for Washington, so we'll figure to see them back in here in just a moment. What does Morton have to do here? Morton came out of the gates guns a-blazing, and they were looking pretty good. 9-3 lead, early on, but you'll take the early start. Since then, though, it's been all Washington. What do the Potters do out of this timeout?
I think it's, keep playing your game. Like I said, just couldn't get a couple of shots to fall. But we've seen with Getz on the bench kind of thrown off the vibe, how they play a little bit. I think Durbin's still your leader out there, but it's nice to have Getz inside to get you some buckets. But we've seen a little bit of a different team, so I think it's going to be important in this third quarter, too, once you get Getz back. But
one-on-one for Durbin, and Durbin finishes. That's a nice start, John, the steal and the score.
That is, right out of the timeout, that's what you want. And Morton just not giving up here. You're not out of this game at all. You're a 4-point game, but I think just keep running the course and just try to limit Washington's looks inside. That's how they've been separating themselves a little bit.
Bounce to Bass, and Bass the travel. So all of a sudden, don't look now, but the Potters could make it a one-possession game. And of course, we say that might sound like we're a little later in the game than we are. As Morton kicks to the corner, 3 on the way. Nope. Foul away from the ball. That'll be against Washington. The Potters will keep it here and, in fact, get free throws in the 1-and-1 bonus. But, John, the first half this year almost does feel a little bit bigger, right? Because it seems like so many games we've seen, the second half is when one team, maybe who had the better first half, maybe not, seems to go on a run. It's hard to stay in these games for 40 minutes. Maybe it's the masks, maybe it's the condensed season, whatever. But just anecdotally, it's not always going to be a great second half.
No, I agree, Joey. And I think in a game like this, especially a Morton-Washington rival, every basket's crucial. So, I mean, even in the first half, you want to be playing for that halftime lead, or, if you're down, you want to be down maybe 2 or 3. But, every basket's crucial. And I think as the half goes on, like you said, Washington can wear you down a little bit. You don't want to be on the losing end of that if you're Morton. So I think this is a chance here in these next 3:50 to get back in the lead.
Morton does make it a one-score game on the 2 made free throws. Bass has it for the Panthers. Calls out his offense and finds Mounts. Mounts will try to go to work. He'll feed to Vanderheydt. Vanderheydt wanted the slam. Did a nice job of shifting himself midair and finishes with the 2 nevertheless.
And how about the pass there by Mounts? No look to Vanderheydt, but he's a really, really good basketball IQ player. He knows where all of his teammates are at on the court at all times. He could really just assert himself and show how good he is as an assist leader.
Potters wanted the same thing on the other end. They wanted Hudson Strube on the alley-oop, and Strube, I don't think, was quite ready for the pass. So Mounts will bring it up for Washington. And right back to Vanderheydt and Drew Lewis. Now it's Mounts, 10 on 10 as Durbin comes out. And he pops it out to Mapson, and Mapson on Strube, turns around. And, John, how many times have we seen Mapson do that tonight? Yeah,
that quick catch and spin, and it's very deceiving. You think he's going one way, he goes the other way, and that up and under is deadly. We see that a lot from Vanderheydt and Mapson, and Washington getting inside is not a good sign if you're Morton.
It's up to a 6-point lead, and Matt Franks wants a timeout. That timeout coming inside of 3 minutes left in the first half. 6 points for Isaac Mapson. Might get a little overshadowed by Tyler Bass's 8. But nevertheless, if I had to pick a player of the game thus far for either side, Mapson would be right there. Bo Durbin would probably be my candidate for Morton. He's had a very nice performance with 7 to this point as well. Kind of, Morton has done a little bit of everything. They've tried to go down low, and they've taken some threes as well. And to that effect, John, I think neither side is doing one thing. Neither side's hammering one thing in particular.
No, and I think it'll be interesting to see in the next 2:45 here with Josiah Getz returning for Morton to see if he can light a spark for the Potters.
Thomas Kruger turns around. He's got the basket. Potters have done a good job responding here last couple of minutes.
They have.
We're trading baskets as Bass feeds to Keinitz. And back to Bass, and they'll swing it around. Mounts driving in on Durbin. Mid-range floater, no dice. And that'll stay home with Washington off of Morton. Looked like Kruger was the last to touch it.
And, Joe, you got to feel like every shot we've seen down low, doesn't it feel like Mapson's there every time?
Well, he's there now as he can't quite get that to fall, but he gets his own rebound and puts it in.
Seen a lot of that from him this year, especially in their series with Limestone. He was phenomenal in the post.
Durbin drives, Durbin draws contact. That's really the matchup right now with Vanderheydt on the bench for Washington is, Drew Lewis, Mapson against Kruger is really the battle to watch. Mapson the foul, that's his third. And this is the first we will see of Cade Beidscheid for Washington. 33 in white. Didn't see him in the Limestone game either, so this is his first appearance on ClutchSportsIL.com this season. Second free throw off, but a rebound for Carter. Carter draws the foul. And that would be a foul on Coker. So it's going to be Coker's second. It was a clean first 4 minutes of the first quarter, John, and now things have changed. That's 10-plus fouls for Washington, 7 for Morton. And Morton's going to start taking advantage of this.
Exactly, and we touched on how big these free throws are, especially late in this first half. And Morton gets 2 there, so cutting that lead to 3, and it'll be big to see who can shift and who can take the lead into halftime here.
And Carter with 5 points. Junior guard having a nice game. Bass Mounts on a layover from Keinitz. And Durbin and Mounts has been a fun battle to watch. Great defense from Durbin here. Mounts has nowhere to go. He's going to try to poke it loose. That gives Mounts the advantage. Coker wants the baseline. He wants the score, and he's got it. Panthers lead back up to 5.
And as we've seen, earlier in the season, how well Mounts is with the ball, it's going to be tough to get steals off of him. He's a very good ball handler, as Durbin just tried there, but
tried to sneak up on him. Mounts tries to go for a steal of his own. 3 on the way for Morton, and knocking it in is Kruger.
Joey, everything you'd expect from a first half between these two teams as we talked it up.
2-point game, under a minute left in the first half. Glad you're with us. As the Panthers have it up top and Mounts.
Certainly feels as if it's a late season Mid-Illini battle, but we're only a couple games into the season. But man, the intensity in this one so far.
It's got that playoff feel to it. Keinitz over to Bass. And back to Keinitz. Panthers have shown in the past they're not afraid to hold for an extended period of time. John, looks like they may hold for the final shot.
I think too, yeah, and if they can convert here, this would be big momentum for Washington going in. But the way it's looking right now, Joey, yeah, they are going to play for the last shot here, and we'll see whose hands it lands in.
It's in Mounts' right now over to Coker's. 10 seconds left. Coker at the logo. Coker trying to drive. That's Bass, He's spinning, and he's fouled. Tyler Bass is not a bad candidate to have the last shot, and he will get 2 free throws late. May not serve as the final shot of the half, but it'll serve its purpose just the same.
Gotta like having one of your best free throw shooters at the line if you're Washington.
Bass, the Loras College commit, knocks in the first. One more would make it a 2-score game, of course. We'll see how Morton reacts, make or miss. Bass at the line, off the iron, no dice, rebound. It was Beidscheid that nearly had it. Tried to keep it in, and instead out on him. Morton will inbound, 3 seconds left. Washington makes it a little tough for them to get it in, and it's Carter, a deep 3 at the horn. Getz nearly was able to clean it up down low, but the buzzer sounds, and that's how the first half ends, with Washington ahead 27-24.
So yeah, certainly a great game, Joey, and we've seen a lot of extra effort, second chance points here between both teams, and certainly what you'd expect in a first half. Very close game between these two teams as Washington has the upper hand. So we'll see how Morton responds in the second half, but tremendous game so far.
Tremendous game indeed. The clock is running at halftime, and we will, in just a moment, take a break and get you back for the second half. 27-24 Washington. Folks, keep your browsers open. Keep those phones on and ready to go. It's going to be a fun second half. You'll catch it all on ClutchSportsIL.com or directly on YouTube if that's where you've chosen to join us tonight. 9:35 on the board for halftime. Joey Wright and John Camosa taking a break with the Panthers ahead of the Potters, 27-24. From the Raymond R. Torrey Gymnasium on the campus of Washington Community High School in Washington, Illinois, ClutchSportsIL.com on the scene for what has turned out to be a really good one in the Mid-Illini Conference. Boys basketball matchup between Morton and Washington. The host Panthers are ahead 27-24. John, about 45 seconds left until the halftime clock expires. What can we expect to see in the second half? We saw a pretty even first half, game of runs. Morton had a run, Washington had a run, and then both teams swapped the lead. Going to be a fun second half for us here in Washington.
I agree, Joe, and I think we're going to see a lot of the same, between both teams. They're not going to let up on the defensive end. We're going to see a lot of extra effort on the boards and second chance points. But, Josiah Getz was out most of that second quarter, so it'll be interesting to see him come back into this lineup, assert himself, being one of their star players, and we'll see if Morton can get a little run going here.
Going to be fun to watch. One area score to report on, John, before we get back underway. Gavin Russell, who is right alongside us, East Peoria High School student, tells me that East Peoria close to a win against Limestone, up 7 late in the fourth quarter there. Don't have an exact score for you, but that's one area score we have. Check the bottom of the screen for more throughout the night. Underway, Morton keying the third quarter, getting it underway. Bo Durbin a three, a little bit short. Rebound, Getz finishes.
And as I mentioned, Joey, we just said a little bit ago, Josiah Getz in this lineup, and right there you see a nice pass from him to Durbin for a three and cleans up the board for a bucket. So
1 point game, firing down low to Mapson, now back out to Lewis as Washington spins, back out to Mapson. And Vanderheydt gets up, nearly finished with both hands, only took him one to drop it in. And a 3-point game again.
And Joey, when Tyler Bass and Devon Vanderheydt are down there together, that 1-2 punch is lethal for the Panthers.
Getz again on the other end for Morton. His second basket in a row. Now has 6 points on the night. It's been a big factor for the Potters all night long.
Could you tell he missed sitting for those minutes there? Anxious to be back, and shows it by scoring 2 quick buckets.
He's made a big impact. Ethan Mounts tried to make a big impact there on the three. Couldn't quite do it, and Morton could take the lead. Down low, and Kruger, at the perimeter there. Gets it back. Gets down low again, but they'll pop it outside to Durbin. Durbin's three just off the mark. Getz couldn't quite bring that rebound in, and Bass brings it up for the Panthers.
And that would have been a big one for the Potters there, Joey, to give them that lead back, but see if they could get a defensive stop here on the other end.
Mapson, nifty pass out to Mounts. Vanderheydt goes to work down low, not quite. Good defense from Morton. And the Potters will slow it down a little bit here. About a fourth of the way through the third quarter. Quick three for Morton. That was Kruger on the three. Seen him take, I believe that's the second one he's taken tonight. Durbin has been electric from the mid-range for Morton.
And a good start for the Potters. Just like that, they got the lead. See how Washington can adjust now and get back into this game.
Durbin now with 9, and the Potters up 1. Drew Lewis, couple steps in. He'll stop, he'll pop, drops it in. Panthers go back up by 1, and Eric Schermerhorn wants a timeout.
And how about that for a back-and-forth start coming out the gate?
A great start to the third quarter. Morton regains the lead. If you're just joining us, Morton popped out to a 9-3 lead in the first quarter. That was followed by a 15-3 Washington run. Panthers took what was a 28-22 lead at one point then, and the Panthers have seen that lead dwindle, and the Potters back to the point for the first time since that mark. And a lot happened in between.
A lot did indeed. And, it's something you would expect in a game like this, back and forth play on both sides of the ball. But Morton right now looking like they gained a little bit of momentum. I wonder what Matt Frank said there at halftime to get his team fired up. But Morton looks like a completely different team to start the third quarter.
Travel there. Bo Durbin turns it over. You hear the Washington contingent coming alive. And Matt Franks, John, he has long been I say this with a small sample size, but every time I've seen Morton play, it's a second-half team. They're a team that kind of no matter what the first half looked like, they can turn it on, crank it up, and make the shots when it matters most.
I agree, and I think a lot of that has to do with learning from your mistakes in the first half and adjusting and making those adjustments and, answering. I think we've seen that from Morton now as Washington just had a good take to the basket, but
Tyler Bass on the offensive for the Panthers. Durbin attacking. Bank closed, gets the rebound, couldn't get that to go. And the friendly roll will favor Washington there, John. Morton was close, but a good defensive effort stymies the Potters' attack.
And Joey, one thing you got to like to see, we've seen some threes in this game, but feels like a lot of these baskets are coming off second chance efforts and drives to the basket. And a lot of these guys like to get inside and kind of show their dominance.
Offensive rebounding so important in a ball game. You need a couple of those putbacks to put you in a good position. Drew Lewis attacks. He's stopped. Coker has the ball in hand, and good defense from Kruger will force him to give to Drew Lewis. So the Panthers now slow it down. Carter is out to defend Lewis. Lewis will attack, had a little bit of a lane, and he traveled. Had a little bit of a lane there, John. Had the keyword. The Potters defense did a good job of converging and cutting him off.
And Joey, we've seen that in a couple possessions tonight, just getting a little bit ahead of themselves on both Morton and Washington side and having some travels, but I think maybe just trying to do a little too much in the lane there and getting caught up, but you got to like to see the extra effort.
Absolutely. 4:01 left, third quarter. Mask timeout. We'll take this time to remind you that tonight's broadcast is brought to you by Jake Weston, State Farm Insurance. Jake Weston in Washington, Illinois. For all of your insurance needs, Jake Weston is the guy. 309-444-4441. Again, that's 309. As you see on your screen, a lot of fours until you get to that last number, which is 1. Glad to have Jake Weston aboard tonight. State Farm in Washington and a proud supporter of Clutch Sports Media and high school athletics across Central Illinois.
And Joey, we'll touch on Morton here during this timeout, but if they can come out of here with a win tonight, look at their upcoming schedule with Metamora twice, who we've seen, and Metamora so dominant in the Mid-Illini Conference, but this would be big for, Morton to get some momentum coming out of this one if they can pull it out tonight going into that series with the Redbirds.
That'll be a big one, as you see on your screen. That is February 18th and the 20th. Pekin on deck for Washington. A Pekin team that is just beginning to hit its stride after a couple of early cancellations. That Metamora series, John, as you mentioned, that'll be an interesting one to follow. Everding has it for the Potters now. He's guarded by Coker. Trying to get around Coker. And to Getz in the corner, and a corner three from Getz. Josiah Getz, he's been knocking them in from everywhere in this third quarter.
He has. He didn't get one to fall earlier, but he finds his stroke there, and he can definitely shoot it when you give him space. See how Washington can respond.
Vanderheydt now mounts a three on the way. Off the mark. A lot of these threes, John, have just had a little too much on them. That's from both sides. Neither side is hesitant to take those threes. That was probably not the best look for Mounts, but you like to see that confidence. You like to see your point guard take that shot. Drew Lewis, the inbound.
I think, Joey, too, some of them have been a little bit forced because both these teams just want to get that lead on each other, and they know how good the defensive is. You don't want to be in a close game during the final stretch.
How about that play from Drew Lewis? Drew Lewis missed it, got his own rebound, lost that, and then went to work to get that back and draw the foul. That foul will go on Everding, his first and the team's first. And Washington, an errant inbound pass. Vanderheydt crashes into the bench. He's all right as Morton tries to take advantage, and a foul on the other end. Everding gets 2.
Just a little miscommunication there. I think he was expecting a cut, kind of went the wrong way. It leads to free throws on the other end for Morton, so a big shift there.
A very physical sequence that ended with Everding. Looked like he hit his head on the floor. So that caused some initial tension, shall we say. People were nervous to see that, but he's back up and sinks his first free throw. That might have been, John, the most physical 8-10 seconds of basketball we've seen tonight. Vanderheydt, you ever seen that old play, Shaquille O'Neal going into the bench? He's with the Suns. That's what that looked like.
Yeah, it certainly did, and something you would certainly expect between Morton and Washington, a physical game, which we've seen for 3 quarters.
Panthers see Vanderheydt coming at him again, expect him to all flee. They know what's coming. Both free throws good from Everding. Mapson might have taken that one off the, it was tough to tell if that hit his hand there or if it deflected off his face. He's okay, but wasn't expecting the pass in any case.
And Joey, I would say those last 2 possessions from Washington just uncharacteristic. Not usually like them being so balanced, limiting turnovers, and just two times miscommunication leads to turnovers.
Going at it is Kaufman for Morton, and Kaufman backs down his man and scores. Bass on the other end for Washington to Lewis. And Lewis traveled, so that's 3 possessions in a row, John, that you could call uncharacteristic for the Panthers. Morton is taking advantage on the offensive end.
And I think, Joey, if we see another bucket from Morton, expect a timeout from Schumacher because he will not be happy with 3 miscommunication plays that would lead to a Morton basket and giving them a lead.
Morton could make it a 7-point game with a 3. It looks like Everding will attack for the 2. No, he'll pop it back out to the perimeter, and he travels. So another travel there, this time against the Potters. Seth Glatt's a little too quick. And John, this is where we see the rivalry. This is where we see the stakes at play. You can tell both teams are trying so hard, it's leading to a couple of mistakes.
It is, Joey, and right now, too, it's a battle of the benches. Who can be the louder team? Because on Morton's end, we're hearing it big time over here, and great effort and great block there.
You'll hear it especially after that block, and Kaufman goes to town, and he's having a little too much fun. A charge against Kaufman.
And, Joe, you talk about the physicality. This feels like a football game right now. Just laying it on the floor and diving. And
fast-paced on both sides, but we're not seeing any of these possessions in with a basket. Kaufman goes to town. I tell you, though, that Morton bench would have gotten, we would have heard it if he had finished that with some sort of wacky layup.
Oh, certainly, and I think you could tell that Matt Franks wasn't too pleased there. I think Morton's just getting a little bit out of control where they could slow it down there and try to play for a bucket, but they're kind of trying to exchange on the other end and leading to turnovers on their part.
Keenitz goes to work for Washington. He's blocked. 2-on-2 for the Potters. Everding, the kick to the perimeter. Durbin's 3 is short. Rebound corralled by Kaufman. Getz goes up, and Getz finishes.
That's big, Joey, especially in the last minute here. We'll see if Morton can hold on to this lead, but what a turnaround for the Potters.
Clock winding down in the 3rd quarter. Vanderheydt, a little bit of contact, no call. He tries the lane. He's stopped. Potters' defense forces another turnover, and Keenitz the foul for the Panthers.
You talk about getting scrappy, too. You've seen Vanderheydt got away with an elbow there. Might have tried to draw a foul, but you can see this intensity starting to come out both ways, and it's getting a lot more physical than what we even saw in the first half.
Great 3rd quarter for the Potters, and folks, this is the physicality we've talked about since Saturday. Talked about it at the top of the show, and we've mentioned it throughout. A physical game. Both teams really want it. Just over 8 minutes to decide who will have it. Here's Morton and Kaufman.
And Joey, if you could use one word to describe the game, war is certainly right, as Schumacher said.
Durbin just a little too much on that. That was assisted, or nearly so, I should say, from Everding. Here's Lewis. Lewis is fouled by Everding as he tried to drive towards the basket. It's going to be the 2nd foul against Ashton Everding. Matches his point total. Ben Carter is ready to come in, and he will come in not for Everding, but for Josiah Getz.
And you got to assume here Washington's going to play for well, if they had the ball, it's just I was going to say, play for a quick one. Give Morton a chance there, but leads to Morton's favor to play for the last one.
19 6/10 of a second. That was a foul away from the ball on Washington, and Drew Lewis. Lewis picks up his 3rd. equals the total of team fouls for the Panthers in this second half. We've seen a lot of turnovers on both sides. You know, you could call it sloppy play, but we've not seen a lot of fouls. Only 6 called in the half so far, 3 on each side. And under 20 seconds, Morton will inbound. So, John, do you think they hold for the final shot? Well, we'll see if we get there first. Keenitz will pick up the foul.
I think, Joey, we're biting our tongue each time we say something. There's a foul on the other end or a turnover. So, see, I think see who they get the ball to if it's not Getz or Durbin taking your last shot. But
that was Keenitz's second foul, 4th for Washington. Inside of 10 seconds for Morton. Bo Durbin has it. Gets around Keenitz, he looks, he stops, floats one up, no, loose ball out of bounds as the clock expires. I don't think it will matter who had it. Getz thought it would stay with Morton, but John, a bang-bang play, the horn expires, or the clock expires right as the ball touches the ground, and that ends the third quarter.
And can't get that one to fall, but saw how fired up Matt Franks was with his team, and that's exactly what you want if you're Morton, taking that 6-point lead into the fourth quarter, but expect an all-out battle here in the fourth quarter. Washington's not just going to lay down and give up in this game, but I think we should see a very, very physical fourth quarter and definitely on pace to see a score similar to Saturday's in the 40s or 50s.
Final score of Saturday's winner for Washington was 53-45, so I think the losing side, John, will top 45. I wouldn't, be surprised to see that, but it would not shock. Well, I guess Washington only has 33, so we'll see how that plays out. Jake Weston, State Farm in Washington, as you see on your screen, 309-444-4441. For all your insurance needs, call Jake Weston, State Farm agent in Washington, Illinois. 8 minutes to play in Washington, and excited to decide a winner. Glad to have Jake Weston aboard tonight.
And Joey, what type of adjustments do you think we'll see from Washington here and try to get back in this lead?
I think they've got to end every possession with a shot. That one didn't fall, but John, they've just been turning the ball over too much.
And another forced three there. Vanderheydt is a good shooter, but it looks like he got a little ahead of himself there. And like I said, another uncharacteristic play, just kind of planks that one off the glass. But
Kruger ball in hand for Morton. Point I'll make here in just a second, John, as Everding is cut off by Mounts. No, creates a little space. Mounts gets there to stop him. Kruger nearly had something in the corner, but instead he'll get it back to Everding, and Everding finishes. Ashton Everding.
Biggest lead we've seen. And Potter's on the other end of this.
It is an 8-point lead. John, the Washington coaching staff and Eric Schermerhorn largely letting the Panthers play through this. They've kept the timeouts in the back pocket. Going down low to Vanderheydt. He's fouled. And the Panthers will look to stem the tide with 2 free throws.
And I think that speaks on that he trusts his team, that they can battle through this adversity. Touched earlier in the season that they've been through adversity throughout the years. And I think just let him play through this and try to cut back into this lead. See if they can't do it here in the next couple minutes.
Vanderheydt, the first free throw falls. We say stem the tide and we say stop the run. It's only an 8-point lead. Morton has had a great second half. They've come out of the gate swinging. But Washington's still right in there with a couple stops, a couple scores. 8 points for Vanderheydt. He's second to Bass's 11 points for Washington. Now has 9 points, does the 6'7" senior. And it's a 6-point game again. Morton up quick on the sideline. Seth Glatz. Glatz to the corner and Kruger to Durbin. Durbin just a little bit off. Getz nearly had the offensive rebound and a travel as Mapson came down with it.
And I think, Joey, something that speaks volumes of your defense if you're Morton late in this fourth quarter is that Mapson and Vanderheydt both held to under 10 points. So that's big. Tyler Bass being the lone double-figure scorer with 11, but in a low-scoring game like this, you want to hold their 2 better players to a minimum.
Bass with 11, Vanderheydt with 9, and Mapson with 8. Mapson defending Durbin there. Gets his own rebound. That last travel for Mapson, as the pass to Bass was tipped away. That last travel wasn't Mapson's fault, but just a testament to the pace the Potters are playing with. They've kind of forced Washington into a couple of holes. Mapson has it on the block. And Bass has a three coming up, no dice. Now Drew Lewis will attack, and he'll go to Vanderheydt. Vanderheydt doesn't get the basket, but again, John, second possession in a row, he draws contact and a pair of free throws.
Did a good job there, too. Mapson being in that corner, he does like to shoot the three, but knowing they're down right now and they played for a better shot working inside to Vanderheydt, and see if he can come away with some free throws here.
Made 2 of 2 at the line last time. Now he's made 3 of his last 3. And coming in is Lane Kaufman for Morton. Everding will jog to the bench. John, you're not always going to get that shot down low to go, when you're going up against the trees. But if you can draw free throws, and if you can make the free throws, as Vanderheydt has done 4 times in a row, that's the next best thing. Works just the same.
And, Joey, when you're a player that good at, like, Vanderheydt and being 6'7", expect to get contact in almost every trip down the floor when you're under the basket especially.
Seth Glatz has it up top for Morton. Panthers defense is there, and the Panthers crowd gets loud. That's the bench. Those are the younger teams. Morton going low, and Glatz stopped by Vanderheydt. Durbin is open. Durbin came flying in. Friendly roll favoring Washington. Vanderheydt a 3 would have made it a 1-point game, but over the glass it goes, out of bounds. And the Potters' 4-point lead safe for the time being.
Well, what a sequence in these last couple plays. We've seen a couple close misses on the other end, but you can feel Washington desperate to get back in that driver's seat.
It has stood at 4 points for the last minute or so. Neither side has been able to grow it or cut into it. Mapson there to force the pass out of bounds. And, John, that's something I've noticed from Washington. They've really done a great job of playing the passing lanes last couple trips down the floor.
They certainly have, Joey, and you see if they can step up here on the defensive end. But Morton doing a good job to be unselfish with the ball and play for a good shot.
Gets a 3, too strong. Rebound was corralled by Glatz. And Glatz was fouled. I believe that foul was on the floor. And, yes, they will call that on the floor. I believe. Yep, they will.
I believe you're right.
A little confusing because Glatz went up for the shot after the whistle, maybe trying to create something that wasn't there. Carter will inbound it to Glatz. And Glatz tries the baseline. He's fouled and one. Tyler Bass picks up the foul, and Seth Glatz picks up what is one of the bigger baskets of this game.
As we stated earlier, the football star for the Potters, and shows it on the basketball side of things, and great take there to get past Bass and finish strong.
Glatz the free throw off the mark, but the Potters, and gets the rebound. 3 on the way and in. Thomas Kruger.
That was huge there, Joey. Getz heads up play, getting a rebound, swing it to Kruger, and just like that, Morton showing their dominance.
9-point lead for the Potters, largest tonight. Drew Lewis tries to answer for Washington, but it's a miss and a rebound for Morton, and Mapson is quickly going to pick up the foul. And I believe that's his 4th. It's his 3rd or 4th. It is his 4th. And 4 is important, a timeout coming, but equally as important, John, that's going to put Morton in the bonus the rest of the way.
Yeah, Joey, and Morton going to take a timeout here just to, not talk things over and not get too excited here and say, hey, guys, we're up in this game. Let's keep the composure and keep at our pace.
This timeout, a great time to remind you that our coverage tonight is brought to you by Jake Weston, State Farm agent in Washington, Illinois. Jake Weston, for all of your insurance needs, call him at 309-444-4441. Very thankful to have Jake in with us. Big-time supporter of Clutch Sports Media and all that we do on ClutchSportsIL.com, helping get this game to you. And we'd like to remind you that tomorrow night we will be at Peoria High School. Big one coming up, the Danville Vikings making the trek up I-74 to take on the Lions. It's the longest trip in the Big 12, or one of the largest trips in the Big 12. You factor in the 4 Peoria schools. That one will tip off at 6:30. Larry Larson and John Camosa back in with you for that one. That Peoria High team, John, as we get a 1-and-1 free throw from Kruger coming up. The Peoria High team's a lot of fun to watch.
They certainly are, and got some young players there who's really shown how they developed through the years under new head coach Dan Ruffin, former Bradley standout.
That's right. Son of course, longtime coach Dan Ruffin and his father. And on Thursday, as the free throws fall, we will be in Pekin. The Washington girls basketball team at the Pekin Dragons. That one at 7 o'clock start. Join us then. Drew Lewis has it up top for the Panthers. Panthers are down 11. Largest lead of the game for Morton. Mapson drawing contact, and one. It falls at the final second. One more coming at the line for Mapson.
Crucial play there for Washington. You don't want to let any other points slip away and let this lead get too out of hand, but that was a good finish there by Mapson.
Ethan Keenitz is ready to come in. Free throw a little too strong from Mapson. Rebound, Morton. And after the forceful free throw, the Potters will take it ahead. Glatz is guarded by Vanderheydt. Seth Glatz to Ben Carter. Glatz had the big and one a couple of moments ago. Carter guarded by Bass. He looks and finds Getz. Getz to Bo Durbin. Durbin and Drew Lewis. Gonna tango here at the top. Durbin wants it. Durbin doesn't have it, and the rebound, Tyler Bass.
Good effort there from Durbin, just couldn't get it to fall.
Quick on the other end, Morton. Nice move from Mounts. Mounts' three is on the way and in. Ethan Mounts, what a move. The pump fake, sold the defender. He has 6. And that's the deficit for Washington.
And last week against Notre Dame, Mounts struggled from three-point range, but tonight he's got 2 and showing he's not afraid to shoot it.
Good one brewing on ClutchSportsIL.com. Morton on the offensive end and Kruger. Kruger back to Glatz. Glatz guarded by Vanderheydt. Vanderheydt nearly forced it loose. But first, a timeout called by Matt Franks. Good timeout from Franks, I feel like here, John. It'll be a 30-second timeout. He just wants to settle the players down.
Yeah, and, coming out of this timeout too, especially say, hey guys, we got to be protecting the ball because Washington, like you said, this type of team late in the game, they've shown throughout the years that they can come back on you and steal a win. But Devon Vanderheydt doing a good job there, trapping him in the corner, and expect this defensive pressure and this intensity to ramp up for Washington. Eric Schumoren's going to have him fired out of the timeout, and equally the same with Matt Franks and his Potters team to say, hey, let's play our pace.
A couple of moments ago, the Morton lead stood at 11. You wondered if the Potters were going to mount their final charge. But we mentioned at the top of the show, John, this Washington team, a team of leaders, team of experience. They've got it back to 6. 3:21 as Morton inbounds. And it's Glatz up top. Glatz and Bass will do battle. 20 on 20. And a swing over to Durbin. Durbin is double teamed. That leaves Carter open. And it leaves Durbin open again on the feed back, and a big 3. Glatz the assist, and Morton goes back ahead by 9.
And we stated his three-point shooting, and you see it there from Durbin. Not a guy you want to leave open, and Morton takes a nice lead here in the last 2:50.
Under 3 minutes to play. Mapson going to work. Mapson is fouled. We've talked so much about Devon Vanderheydt and his physicality down low. Easy to overshadow Mapson, and Mapson with 4 fouls, so he's got to be a little careful, but still on the offensive end, going to work, has 10 points, and 11 and 12 could be big.
Yeah, Joey, and you said gets overshadowed just a touch, but feels like night in and night out he's getting you double-doubles with points and rebounds. He's a guy that's consistently down there fighting for the loose ball and getting second chance efforts.
Missed his second 8-point game. He's had his hand on a lot of plays. Both teams with 7 fouls here as Morton works it ahead. Bonus both sides the rest of the way. Glatz guarded by Vanderheydt. Now it's Carter. Carter is guarded by Bass. And Carter sees a lane. He looks for Getz. Getz looks for Glatz. And Glatz looks for the 3 and drains it.
That was huge and spacing the floor real well. And you'd see those last 2 threes by Glatz and Durbin.
Vanderheydt quick to respond. And he's got a 3 on the offensive end. Timeout Washington.
Just when you see Morton take a big lead, Washington is not out of this game whatsoever. 2 minutes. A lot of time to work with still. Big answer there for Vanderheydt, the 6'7" senior forward.
Might be my favorite thing to say during a basketball game, right? Anything you can do, I can do better. Big three from Glatz. Equally large three from Vanderheydt. They cancel each other out. Isn't that the irony of basketball?
Yep.
Right back where we started.
It is, and we'll see how Morton responds from that, after Washington came back in it. But Morton doesn't look like they're intimidated right at the moment. They're coming down and responding on their end.
Morton will inbound out of the timeout. They'll need a response. They get it in. And a foul called on Mapson, John. That'll be 5 for him. Kruger brought it up, and you could tell Kruger was kind of looking for contact on his way. 1-and-1 free throws for Kruger as Mapson departs. Or will depart here. Yep, now he goes for the final time tonight.
And Joey, you just mentioned how crucial he is in this lineup, and losing him in this last 2 minutes, not what you want to see if you're Washington, but playing with 4 fouls is always risky.
And he played with 4 fouls. He played with 3 fouls for a while, then on to 4. Gave Washington all he could tonight. Free throw off the mark, but a rebound from Getz. 3 coming from Glatz, and Glatz the 3. That's big for Morton, to say the least.
Huge 3 back-to-back from Glatz.
Pass to Mounts. Mounts trying to find Vanderheydt. Vanderheydt nearly the and one, but will get to the line for 2. Going back on that last possession from Morton, that 3 from Glatz, unexpected. I don't think anyone would have expected him to take that shot, being that you've got the 8-point lead late. Maybe he tried to kill some clock, but he knew what he wanted and he got it.
Joey, would you say after these free throws, if he can sink a second one, that a little bit of desperation mode for Washington, knowing that Morton might come down here and stall it a little bit more than what they have, and knowing there's no shot clock? But if you're Washington, you're definitely going to want to ramp up that defensive pressure. See him come out of the full court press here.
Desperation may be a fair way to term it. Morton double team. Washington brings the press. Mounts like a quarterback, tips the pass. Panthers need this one. Here's Mounts. Mounts guarded by Kruger. Back to Drew Lewis. Drew Lewis tries to attack. Back to Vanderheydt. His 3 on the way. Just off. Drew Lewis the rebound. Puts it back. And a timeout called by Washington.
That was big, and we talked about it a lot early in the game, Joey, that second chance points are huge, especially down the stretch. Vanderheydt pretty confident that one kind of backed away like it was going to go, but Drew Lewis right there, right man, right spot, finishes.
Does that not change the complexion of this one? Maybe just a little, shall we say. And this, Eric, is where, or not Eric, John, this is where Eric Schermerhorn saves those timeouts, right? Kind of let his team play through some adversity earlier.
Let him play through, and Drew Lewis cutting this game to 7. We touched back on the play before that, how big of a defensive effort by Ethan Mounts. Washington's that type of team. They pride themselves on the defensive end, and in my opinion, if Washington can cut back into this and get it to a 3-4 point game, that was one of the biggest plays you'll see from your guard.
And do you think Morton was maybe trying to get it ahead a little too quick there? Morton, and that worked with the 3 from Glatz, the aggressive shot. Worked there, didn't work there.
I agree, and I think if you're Morton, you're thinking, hey, we got this lead. We want to try to break this defensive full court pressure, but you got to know there's quickness on the other end of that floor, and always risky when you throw a pass like that.
So we'll see how Morton responds again. Minute 27, Washington brings the press. Ball's loose, it's on the floor. Jump ball coming. That arrow will favor, we'll see. It'll favor Morton, and that's what the Washington bench had said. So the jump ball arrow does favor the Potters, but that's big, John, because if we get that situation again, of course, then it goes back to Washington. They'll bring the press again.
How about the last 2 plays just now? Washington almost forcing that turnover. So you got to know in a 7-point game, Washington's really going to step on your throat with this defensive pressure.
Ethan Keenitz the foul. The 5'10 junior guard has his 3rd. And this will be the last time we see Morton in the 1-and-1. Worth noting that as this game hurdles into its final stages. And it's Glatz at the line. Guy you want at the line misses the free throw.
And correction, that's Durbin. Durbin at the line.
Pardon me, Durbin at the line, and it's a big miss. Let's see how Washington responds. It's Mounts. Mounts had the three, didn't take it, drives in, contact, and two coming up.
And good take in Washington, a very well free throw shooting team. And this is what you want if you're Coach Eric Schurmore and your team going to the line where they practice a lot of these. Try to cut it to 5 if they can knock them down.
Mounts, a guy you won at the line as well, has 12 for the Panthers. His first on the way, no dice. So perhaps 2 jinxes in a row there. I said the same for Durbin. Durbin on the miss. But missed free throws, jinxes aside, John, not something you need. If you're either side, for Morton, they're going to let Washington back in and might keep Washington looking in from the outside. But he got his second, Mounts did, and it's a 6-point game.
And right where you want him if you're Washington, 6-point game. We'll see if Morton can respond. Try to limit turnovers here.
This press has been so good for Washington. They've got Morton in trouble. Mounts swats it down. Washington slams it home. Tyler Bass.
And Mounts, talk about those defensive plays. That's twice now he's forced a turnover, which leads to a big dunk. And almost another one there, Joey.
Poked loose. Mounts came in trying to scoop up the loose ball. It's a foul. So a moot point. And the mood in this gym has shifted, John Camosa. That press from Washington 3 or 4 times in that sequence worked like a charm.
Yep, certainly did. And to get 3 guys to swarm right there on Ben Carter and then Ethan Mounts to jump and volleyball that ahead to Tyler Bass for the dunk. Huge play for the Panthers.
First free throw, rattles in, rattles out for Ben Carter. Carter for the Potters. Nice game to this point, 5 points, hasn't scored a ton, but has been a part of a lot of the offense. Second free throw coming up. That is off the mark. Washington runs and guns. Drew Lewis up for the Panthers. Lewis to Mounts. Mounts plants his feet, looks for Bass. Bass is fouled, top of the arc. And that will put Bass at the line, and that ought to be 5 for Everding. So Everding has fouled out, and indeed, as I thought, that'll be 10 fouls. So the double bonus coming up for Bass.
And Joey, before Tyler steps to the line here, Tyler Bass, we talked this game up in the excitement, and it's certainly lived up to the hype. What a game if he can cut this to 2.
First on the way and in, 3-point game. Washington, if you are just joining us, has trailed for most of the second half after leading for a lot of the first. They've battled it back to 3. They've battled it back to 2. 57-55. Here's the press one more time. It's Glatz, double teamed by Bass and Lewis, and a timeout called by Matt Franks.
And they swarm you in that backcourt. That's almost the 3rd time in a row that Morton hasn't crossed the half-court line. And Joey, we're going to see Washington keep up with this defensive pressure until they want to get a lead here or tie this game. And could we see overtime?
We may. When you and I get on the mics together, something about it, right?
Yep.
Saw 3 overtimes the other night, Metamora and Dunlap girls basketball. Dunlap a big winner in that one. 57-55 with 37 3/10 to play here tonight.
And I think you touched on it on Saturday, Joey, but we're getting in that situation. One of those games you hate to see either team lose.
Exactly.
Just like Dunlap and Metamora girls, but both teams have just battled all night long and left it out on the floor, and be anxious to see who comes away a winner.
Both teams have battled so hard. And John, I've been calling it a press. It's really turned into more of a trap here. Washington has really made it hard on Morton to get the ball in. Morton won't inbound from the baseline this time, but would you expect them to do the same here, even a little further up the floor?
Still think you're going to see a lot of that in-your-face pressure, and Coach Eric Schurmore wants to force another turnover, doesn't want to put him at the line here, so.
Couple players for Washington on the floor with 3 fouls if they have to. No players with 4. Morton gets it in. Glatz, I should say, to Durbin, to Carter. Mounts the steal. Here goes Washington. Washington numbers. They'll float it up to Kienitz. Kienitz has it rooted away, but Bass the rebound and the foul. 2 free throws for Tyler Bass could tie it up.
And what an extra effort there. Kind of a broken play. Trying to get a little flashy. I think he thought Vanderheydt was there for the alley-oop that he didn't go, but cleans it up in Bass and going to the line with a chance to tie. It'd be huge.
Tyler Bass, committed to Loras College. The gym will go silent. We'll tone it down 2. First free throw on the way. Off the mark, missed it short.
Still a chance to cut it to a 1-point game.
And then you could play the foul game, right? Or try to force the quick turnover. Morton's got to be ready on the rebound.
Like you said, you make the free throw, and Morton could still go down there and make 2, and you still have a chance at a.
Bass second free throw in, 57-56. Both teams 2 timeouts left. Will Morton use them? Washington defense there again. It's Durbin. Durbin nearly lost it, but was fouled. And we'll see who they call that on. It was Lewis and Bass, both there for Washington. Washington will use one of its 2 timeouts, and that will go against Lewis. No, pardon me,
no
Bass.
Timeout? Okay.
It looked like Schermerhorn wanted the timeout, but they won't take that.
Just called them over during the stop before the free throw lined up. But
so both teams still with 2, and that is against Bass, his 4th.
You can hear the underclassmen stomping their feet. Big miss.
That's a miss short.
Big miss for Washington. Not a good miss if you're Morton.
It's where those 2 timeouts come in clutch for both sides. Free throw off the mark. Rebound, Vanderheydt and Washington. Panthers will run it. 12 seconds left, down 1. Here's Lewis. Lewis tries to drive. Lewis drives in. Blocked. Bass, rebound, foul.
Wow. And Bass, we've seen him at the line 3 consecutive times, Joey.
Tyler Bass and the Panthers have found themselves in a spot where they could take the lead with under 6 seconds to play.
And I can't say this enough, everything you would expect out of this game when these 2 teams take the court. Great game Saturday, great game tonight.
What a battle. Bass could tie it. Free throw on the way and in.
So even if he missed here, you have the tie right where you wanted, but what a turnaround for Washington. Speaks volumes of their defensive pressure, and Morton now finds themselves in a different situation.
57 all, 5 seconds left. 5 9/10, we should say. Bass at the line for Washington has 17 on the afternoon, the evening, I should say, and he could give the Panthers the lead. Unbelievable into this 4th quarter.
We saw a 3 overtime thriller on Saturday between Metamora and Dunlap girls, and this one is certainly shaping up to be one of the best boys games we've seen so far on the air.
Unreal. We got to call more games together, right?
I think so, Joey.
5 9/10 on the board. It'll be Tyler Bass at the line for Washington. Leads all scorers with 17.
Tyler Bass, we talked about free throws too, how big free throws are. And Tyler Bass, he only missed 1 in those 3 consecutive trips, a chance to give his team the lead.
Bass was Washington's #1 golfer in the fall. Big putt coming up here to win it.
Yep.
Or to give him the lead. Can't get too far ahead of ourselves.
The senior committed to Loras College.
Free throw on the way. In after some suspense. Morton won't use a timeout yet. Durbin gets the ball. He's going to take it across. Up we go. 3-2. Durbin coast to coast. Blocked by Lewis.
What a block!
By Drew Lewis. Washington wins it 58-57. Unbelievable.
Joey driving the length of the court there. Thought he had the look, but what a defensive effort from Lewis to win Washington the game, and that won him the game in that whole stretch. The defense was unbelievable. We're seeing both fans, or both teams chirping at each other, and
wow! A game-winning block. Drew Lewis says hello. We say clutch up. Everyone's on their feet. Everyone is celebrating to our right. How about that, John Camosa?
Joe, I know that both teams are very classy teams, but with a COVID era with no handshakes, I'm not sure we would have seen them in a regular game. That got very heated there at the end. But man, what a game and what an effort on the defensive side from Washington. Everything you would expect.
As we expected, right? We talked with Eric Schermerhorn the other day. He said expect a physical game, expect a battle. 58-57, 18 points from Tyler Bass, and the Panthers win it. How do you even recap that, John? They trailed for most of the second half. They were down 11 1 point. I want to say about 4 3 minutes left in regulation, and came back and didn't give up.
Joey, as you were just talking, I'm trying to gather some thoughts in my head of where to start, but I'm glad we have a live stream and a chance to go back and watch how that all unfolded. But where do you begin?
Incredible.
What an effort, and I think until you can gather all those thoughts fully, unbelievable effort by Drew Lewis, because I sure thought Durbin had that lane and had that layup.
I want to recap that. I'm playing that back in my head. But before I do, I want to shout out our entire crew. Larry Larson on the computer, Money All Night. John Michael, best camera operator in the business. Josh Schwam taking pictures for us down on the floor. Gavin Russell has joined us just to kind of overlook things. Sophomore at East Peoria High School. Glad to have him in the house tonight. Evan Johnson rolled in off the street in the second half. Good to have him with us. Tyler Bass at the line. The second free throw falls, right? Gives Washington the lead 58-57, 6 seconds left. Bo Durbin tried to go coast to coast. Morton didn't take the timeout. At first, maybe you question that. You maybe think you want to run the set, but that's why you don't. Caught the defense off guard, had a path to the basket, had the game winner in the air. Drew Lewis out of nowhere.
And honestly, Joey,
Wow.
looking back at it, I think if you're Matt Franks and that game didn't fall in your favor, but I wouldn't be mad at not taking that timeout because, like we stated, Durbin had that lane. He had the quickness to blow by that defense, and it was right there, but it was just a one-on-one bang-bang play, and Drew Lewis came out with the block and the win.
I think it was a great call to not take that timeout by Franks because that's exactly what you want, right? You catch the defense not napping but off guard. You know, you probably expect them to call the timeout and run the set. And Drew Lewis, where did he come from, man? I mean, that was incredible.
Yeah, and like you said, Matt Franks, too, you're trusting your best player, but then if you're Eric Schumacher, you're trusting your defense, and he knew somebody was going to step up for him on that defensive end, and just so happened to be Drew Lewis. But words can't describe that game, Joey. That was incredible.
Tomorrow night, ClutchSportsIL.com has a Big 12 battle for you. It's Danville at Peoria High School, 6:30 tip-off at Peoria High School, the Lions Den. You'll have that call with Larry Larson. That's going to be a fun one. Big 12 and Peoria High School, a great team this year. Jake Weston State Farm in Washington for all your insurance needs. 309-444-4441. One more look there. And John, as we wrap it up, our player of the game, I think it's got to be Drew Lewis would be a popular pick for the block, but it's got to be Tyler Bass.
Tyler Bass.
It has to be.
It definitely is. And, I mean, huge all night on rebounds, huge on the defensive end. Ethan Mounts was big there, forcing some turnovers, but ultimately those are pressure situations, and he came through in the clutch tonight.
Loras College commit, Washington's top golfer last fall, sank the putts when he needed to. So that's where we'll leave it for you at the Torrey Gym in Washington. A speechless Joey Wright with a speechless John Camosa, and for our entire crew, Larry Larson, John Michael, Josh Schwab, Gavin Russell, Evan Johnson. I am Joey Wright. Join us tomorrow if you've still got a heartbeat. Peoria High School and Danville going at it at 6:30. For our entire crew, it's a 58-57 final for Washington. Stay safe. Join us tomorrow night.